2 years after we launched the business, we tragically lost Katie. And the loss was devastating. One of the things that I wanted to do was pay a tribute to her. We recreated 2 of her favorite vintage pieces. We called it the Love Katie collection, and they sold out immediately.
Elyce Arons is the co-founder of Kate Spade New York and the co-founder and CEO of Frances Valentine. This episode is about the story behind building one of the most iconic fashion brands of all time, from friendship and ambition to reinvention, grief, and carrying creativity forward after loss.
Katie was such a wonderfully creative person, and she was the most loyal friend you could ever ask for in your life. So many articles when she died focused on her leaving us and not about her life, which was her whole life.
What do you think are the biggest misunderstandings that people have about Katie?
Well,
Hi guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's conversation. We are so grateful for your support. It helps us continue bringing you these inspiring conversations and stories. So please do us a quick favor and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And let's get into today's chat. Elyce Arons, welcome to Post Run High.
thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm honored to be sitting with you.
Oh,
Everything you've built is so impressive. So Elyce and I were just at her studio downtown. Should we tell them a little bit about what we were just doing?
yes. So I gave you a full tour of the studio. It's a 1900 building. It was an built as an artist residence in 1900. And the tenant who was in our space was Florine Stettheimer, who was one of these prolific female painters. And many people at the time didn't really know her work because she was wealthy and she didn't sell her pieces. But now her pieces hang in the Met, and we celebrate her as often as possible because it feels like it's the right place for Frances Valentine to be, because a woman moved in there as an artist and entrepreneur, and same thing at Frances Valentine. So it feels like a great place for a woman-run company to be.
It's so special. And guys, we'll insert some overlays of the space that we were in, but it was so beautiful. I was saying to you, I grew up loving Kate Spade. There was a Kate Spade store in Ridgewood, New Jersey when I was growing up, and it was always so fun to pop in there and see all the colors. And it was just so girl-coded. It's like exactly what someone that loves like just feminine colors and patterns loves to walk into. And you feel that with Frances Valentine and the new brand that you guys have built.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a happy aesthetic. And we really want to focus on helping women be their best selves, their most confident selves. And I think a big part of that comes in how one dresses their body and the style, their personal style.
How would you describe your personal style?
Oh my God. Fun. Joyful. I love vintage, as we've discussed. I love vintage pieces. They're so nostalgic to me, and they remind me of a happy time in dressing from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I focus mostly on the 60s and 70s. The silhouettes that I find when I go vintage shopping, they are classic. They will never go out of style. And I'm not referring to bell-bottom jeans and those type of silhouettes, but I'm talking about shift dresses and really beautiful pieces of those eras that we bring back. We refit them for today's woman. We put pockets in them and we make them more modern, and we do them in our own prints.
Well, even sitting across from you, the way you are styling just a simple blue sweater and striped collared shirt. We've got such fun jewelry on, a pop of red shoes. This is like the iconic Elyce Arons hairstyle.
This is my boring day today too.
You know what? I need to now see you on like your craziest day because this is so fun. So much about you that is so interesting. But what I love is knowing that you were a girl that grew up on a farm in Kansas.
Yes.
But you had this eye for fashion and love for vintage clothes. So where did that stem from?
So I am the youngest of 4 daughters on a farm, meaning there were no sons to work on the farm. So we all had daily chores every single day. And my mother is from the East Coast. She became a flight attendant for TWA, met my dad on a flight, and they eloped, got married within 3 months of knowing each other. And she was an art student when she became a flight attendant. But she was always doing illustrations, and she took a subscription to Women's Wear Daily, which is so rare for someone in Kansas on a farm to get a subscription to Women's Wear Daily. It always came a few days late. But so it was every single day. So there were these newspapers, these fashion newspapers every single day in my home. And having 3 older sisters who had fashion magazines all the time, 17 and Vogue. And so I always had a love for it. And then probably out of necessity, economically, we would go vintage shopping all the time. And we would find these beautiful pieces that were hand beaded or hand embroidered, and they'd have someone's name in the back of the label when people used to put their names in things. And I would just look at those and think someone lived their life and had all of these stories that they created in this piece of clothing. And they were very personal and meaningful to me. And so I became a huge vintage shopper. I still am today. Whenever I travel, I try and hit as many vintage stores in every city as I can.
And is it true that your mom was a fashion illustrator?
Yes. So my mother illustrated for all of the retailers in Wichita, not all of them, but many retailers in Wichita. And her pieces would come out in the Wichita Eagle Beacon, which is the local newspaper there. And she was busy all the time doing that. She's also a painter and, did a lot of things aside from being a farm wife and an entrepreneur. I have to tell you this story because my mom's an incredible woman. She's 95 today.
Wow.
But when she was 50 years old, I was in college. And she said, I am going to turn our farmhouse into a restaurant. And I thought she was nuts. I was like, nobody's going to drive 20 minutes outside of Wichita, part of it on dirt roads, to come to a restaurant. She enrolled at CIA in New York City, came to New York, went through all the classes. She interned at Le Bernardin here and came home and turned our farmhouse into a restaurant. And she was open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. Later on in my life, I would be on an airplane flying somewhere, and someone said, oh, you're from Kansas? And I was like, yeah, you have to go to this restaurant called the Inn at Sedgwick. And so my mother became an entrepreneur in her 50s, and such a successful one. But she had been doing that her whole life, basically. Whatever was within her reach, she made things happen. And she's been such an inspiration through my whole life because of it.
What I think was so cool about walking into your store is seeing, and I had said this to you when we walked in, but obviously you guys have these incredible collections. You built Kate Spade, you're building this new brand, and your patterns are amazing. The silhouettes are amazing. Just the brand is so beautiful all in. But then you walk into the interior design of the store and you guys are also so good at that, and I know you did an interview with my friend Caleb Simpson where you toured him around your home, which is also so beautifully designed. So it's just so cool to see creativity expressed in so many different ways. And I know you wrote a book that came out last year, and that's, expressing yourself in a written format. So it's cool to see creativity expressed in so many different formats throughout somebody's life.
Well, thank you. I need to sit with you every day.
Really? I'll be your ultimate hype person, let me tell you. At what point did you decide fashion was something that you wanted to do when you graduated college?
Both Katie and I majored in journalism because of Mary Tyler Moore. She was our inspiration. And when I knew that I wanted to move to New York City after I graduated, and I figured, well, hopefully I can get a job with a fashion magazine. So I interviewed at a bunch of them, took the typing test, didn't get any. I had no contacts when I moved here, aside from just knowing my sister.
And you and Katie, backing up, you guys met at the University of Kansas.
We met at the University of Kansas the first day of our freshman year. And her older sister, had talked us into moving to Arizona. So we transferred after our sophomore years. So we finished junior and senior year at Arizona State. And that's where we met Andy and David Spade along the way. I know, it's crazy. But I had always known that I was going to move to New York after I graduated. It had been a dream of mine since the first time I came up here when I was 14 years old. And I love New York. And
what was it about Katie that, we kind of talked about this during the last portion of our interview, but just for our podcast listeners, you and Katie went to the University of Kansas and then transferred to ASU together.
Yes.
You guys met your freshman year at the University of Kansas, though, in your dormitory.
Correct.
What was it about Katie that you were attracted to and vice versa?
Well, the first day we looked at each other, we're like, oh, we're not going to be friends. And once we both realized we were majoring in journalism, we started walking to class together. And what I discovered was the funniest person I've ever met in my life. She was hysterical. And she is a really shy person. So most people never saw that about her, only her intimate friends and family. But I think that's what drew me to her. And she was the most loyal friend you could ever ask for in your life. She was creative, funny, and a really good person. She was kind to people, and she never wanted anybody to feel uncomfortable. And that was one of the things that really drew me to her, because she was such a kind person.
It's interesting too that you say she was shy, and I find that a lot with founders that have brand names about themselves. And even like I was talking to a stand-up comedian recently, and he was like, I'm actually a very introverted person. And it's wild to think, I'm like, how are you an introverted person? Like, you have this huge name about yourself.
Right.
I feel like it's almost a misunderstanding people have about
People in the public. Right. Yeah, I know. It's so true. She, when we started the company and Andy Spade came up with the name Kate Spade, she looked at all of us and she said, don't expect me to be Kate Spade, because she didn't want to be the front man necessarily. But over time, she got really good at it. She never enjoyed, speaking in front of large groups of people, but she was excellent talking to smaller groups and interacting with our customers at trunk shows and that kind of thing.
When you guys were in school together, did you ever think that maybe you would have a brand together? Did you guys ever talk about it?
We always wanted to have a business together when we were in college, and we, drive around Arizona in Phoenix. We drive around, sit up on one of the mountaintops and stare out at the lights at night and talk about what we wanted to do with our lives. And one of the things that we came up with was owning a vintage store and bringing in designers at the same time. So you'd have this mix of vintage and designer pieces. And of course, we had no money to do that. And the only experience we had was really our college jobs and waiting tables, bartending. And Katie worked at a men's clothing store, and that's where she met Andy Spade. And so she was getting that kind of experience. And when a man named Mike Carter, who was the manager of the men's clothing store, broke off and started his own business called Carter's, we all helped him move, and Katie and Andy moved over with him and started working for him. So we helped him unpack boxes and the whole thing. And we got home that day, we were like, we could do this. But we, of course we had no capital. So that dream was, I guess the seed of the dream was there when we were in Arizona. And then I took off and moved to New York by myself. Katie took a trip to Europe, and she had never planned on moving to New York. But when she flew back through, thank goodness, she had no money with her. So she arrived at JFK Airport. She said, I've got $5 in my pocket and no way to get home. And I said, drive to my apartment. I'll sit out on the stoop and wait for you. And you can stay here, go work at a temp agency for a couple of weeks, and you'll save enough money to fly home. And she fell in love with New York. She was sent to Mademoiselle magazine, where she got her first job, and she ended up staying there. And so it all worked out in the end. And then several years later, Andy Spade moved up.
At Mademoiselle magazine, she was on the accessories team.
She was an assistant to one of the fashion stylists to begin with. And over time, over the years, she became the accessories editor. And she was really good at that. She would go out into the market, find the appropriate handbags, jewelry, scarves for every photo shoot. And so she knew the market really well. And she was talking to Andy Spade, her boyfriend, one night, and she said, I don't know where else I can move up here. I don't really want to be in management, and I'm not quite sure what to do. And he said, why don't you start a handbag company? She said, what do I know about designing handbags? And he said, you know what you like. And that's the most important thing. And one of the things that that our whole company was based on was when Katie went out into the market to look for handbags for shoots, she had a really hard time finding what she was looking for. There were European bags that were leather and slouchy and had a lot of hardware on them, or there were canvas LL Bean bags. There wasn't a lot in between that was an accessible American designer. And so her idea came to her to create these geometric shapes that were in untraditional handbag materials. And we found this really great satin finished nylon that we ended up buying from a company. DuPont owned the company. and because it was used for upholstery at that time. But it was perfect for a handbag because of the durability of it. So we used that as one of our first handbags, and she made out of construction paper with tape the shape of the handbags that she wanted. She took them to a pattern maker that she found in the back in the want ads of Women's Wear Daily. The pattern maker made the patterns and then took it to a manufacturer to have samples made. All of that was much harder than I'm making it sound, but that's how we got started. And when the first samples came back, we started adding other materials. And I remember the night Katie and Andy called me. They said, let's start a handbag company together. And I was living in North Carolina working for a company at the time, but flying back and forth to New York. And I said, you know what? I just moved down here for this job. I love this job. Give me a year and I'll move there. And I will be there, I promise. And in the meantime, I flew to New York and helped with all the different things that we were working on at the time to get the company started.
And so you were brought in pretty early on within the beginning, because you're talking about like the early fabrics even.
Right. As was our other partner, Pamela, who we met. We all had our first summer share in the Hamptons one year, which we could barely scrape enough money together for. And Pamela ended up with her husband being in that house. And Katie said, you know, Pamela had her own jewelry company, so she knows all about production. So Pamela was the perfect puzzle piece, and she actually joined physically before I did. I didn't come for another 6 months after that. But it all worked out perfectly. At the beginning, we were all sort of doing everything, and we get into arguments about, a different way to accomplish the same goal. So we sat down and we talked about what each of our roles should be. And of course, Katie was working on design. Pamela took product development and production, and I took sales and marketing. And it worked much more smoothly after we made that decision.
It's hard working with one of your best friends. Like there's a lot of complications, and it's amazing the best friendships that can pan out and build businesses together like you and Katie were able to do. But I'm sure there were hurdles that you guys had to overcome.
Always. There were fights. There were, but you have to get along because you're doing this together. And the good thing is we were so close. It was like sisters. So, and you can't not talk to your sister, even if you're mad. So
also the fun thing that I heard about when you were kind of talking about finding the fabric and finding the manufacturers. So I actually, a few years ago, tried to start an activewear brand. I still want to do it at some point, but I remember it was before I started my interview show. And I remember running around the garment district trying to figure out, I wanted to make like a specific pair of shorts. And you go to the zipper store, which is different than the fabric store, which is different than there's just so many different components to putting together a piece and figuring out how to manufacture a product.
Exactly.
But it's amazing what you can figure out and do when you actually want to get it done, right?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. There's so much involved in it, and you really have to know. You learn all that, of course, when you're doing it, but you really have to know. I think if we knew how difficult everything was going to be before we started, we might not have started, particularly how much capital we needed to get started, because it was the four of us and we would each take turns paying the manufacturing bills every single week because we had to pay on Fridays and we'd get to go pick up all the bags. And
so you were paying out of pocket? Yes,
we were all paying out of pocket. And I would, at that point, I used my 401k to live because I had luckily saved up enough, to survive for a while. But it was a good time for me to do it because at that point in my life, I had no pet, no children. I didn't even have a house plant. So it was a good time to take a risk and sort of jump off that cliff. And I really believed in it. So it was a really good time to do it for me. But I would go out and take money out on my credit cards to pay the bills at the manufacturers every Friday.
And how were you guys selling the products in the beginning?
So we, at the very beginning, we signed up for the accessory circuit was what it was called. Today it's called the Coterie, but it was called the accessory circuit. And it's at the Javits Center. You pay $2,500. You get a booth there. It's a lot more expensive now than it was then, but $2,500 back then in 1993 felt like a lot of money. So we put all of the samples out. We created line sheets, and I drew the line sheets when we were working on them. And I can't draw. So it was, we all, we're all trying to do everything we could to make it work. And we couldn't afford to use the union workers to help set up our booth. So we had to do it all ourselves. And in order to use a staple gun at the Javits Center, you had to have one of the union guys do it. So we tied the muslin of our backdrop. We just tied it in giant ties and bows ourselves to save the $18 an hour it was back then, and set up the booth. And that very first show, we had a whole bunch of specialty stores find us, despite the fact that because it was our first show, we had the worst spot all the way back near the hot dog stand in the show. And Barneys came up, and Barneys bought the bags right off the bat, which was great. Saks eventually showed up. So I knew we had a winner, and it was so exciting.
So after Barneys took interest in you guys and they bought the bag, so what were the initial keys to success to really growing the brand? What happened after that? Because Kate Spade grew quickly.
Yes, it did, very quickly. There's a funny Barney story. So when the Barneys buyers came up, they were very nice, but they said, we don't like the label on the outside of the bag. We want it inside the bag. So we made special bags just for Barneys without the label. And then about a month after they'd had it on the floor, they called us and said, can you put the label on the outside of the bag? Because everybody's walking in and they want the label. So I know, it was great. Really.
And at the time, was it Kate Spade?
Yes.
Okay, so you guys had already made that
Yes, we made the
transition.
switch before we even went to market with the bags. What was your next question? I'm so sorry.
No, that's kind of what were the keys to then scaling the business? I know at the time press was probably big, right? Because it wasn't social media.
We constantly needed more capital because our orders were getting bigger and bigger with every season and every show. The beauty of starting our handbag company, which was different than others because others would do a spring and a fall. Because ours were made from materials other than traditional leather bags when we started, we had the opportunity to hit every season of a woman's life. So spring, we would use linen and cotton poplin, and of course we always had our nylon bags. In the summer, we could do gingham. We could make all these bags so that you had a bag for every outfit all year long. In the fall, we would use corduroy and wool. So it really sort of created this desire for people to have different bags for different seasons and their outfits. And it was unique at the time. No one had done that before. And I think that's what really resonated with so many people, because your accessory now became the focal point of your outfit.
Yeah, and Kate Spade became very culturally significant in the 90s, probably because of the reasons that you're saying. Who were some of the original celebrities that wore your bags?
Oh my gosh, everybody. And we didn't even know half the time because their stylists would buy it at a department store or at Barneys. And so Sandra Bullock was early. The Olsen twins both had our bags. Who's Pretty Woman? Why can't I think of her name right now? Pretty Woman, the actress. You guys know
Julia
this.
Roberts.
Julia Roberts.
Yeah.
Julia Roberts. I mean, you name it, they had our bags. It was all the girls from Friends all had our bags. Courtney Cox and I can't think of their names right now, and I'm not even pregnant. But it's like everybody, and it would pop up in a newspaper somewhere, and we're like, oh my God, she's carrying our bag. So it was really exciting for us because we didn't even have a press clipping service, so we wouldn't even see them unless we stumbled across them. But it was really exciting.
At what point did you guys start venturing out of just bags? Was that later on?
No, it wasn't that much further. And I think I mentioned before, I love writing personal notes, as did Katie. And so we always needed personal stationery, and a group of guys out of Kansas City called and said, hey, we're starting this stationery company and we'd love to do a stationery license for you. And so that was our very first license, was stationery. And it was, handwritten note cards and that kind of thing. And the second one was shoes, because Katie loved, we all love shoes. Who doesn't love shoes? But Katie really loved shoes. And so that was our second license. And we just started, as people approached us for things, we would consider whether those were categories that we should go into or whether we should hold off on doing them. And some of them we waited for several years, like for eyewear, we waited several years to do eyewear because even though there was a lot of interest, it didn't feel like the right time to launch eyewear yet for the brand. Beauty was also later. I think we signed our beauty license in 1999 with Estee Lauder. So there were a lot of things that came later, home products and tabletop and bedding. But the more personal things and things that you wear were pieces that we were interested in early on.
Do you think there's something for a brand to like the idea of starting with something small, like starting with handbags and then gradually adding on? Like, is that a strategy that you think a lot of brands should do or consider?
I think it was unique for us at the time. There are a lot more handbag companies out there now than there ever were before. And I think, us starting Kate Spade was the impetus. People read that story and they were like, well, I can do that too. And that's great. That's great that it was an inspiration to so many people. I think it's harder now to start a new brand and to be able to move into categories like that than it was for us. And I know for our current business, Frances Valentine, we're taking it very slowly when we move into other product categories. And we're manufacturing everything that we make ourselves. It's all in-house.
Yeah, you almost want people to get addicted to that one product and then move. Well, home also made so much sense for Kate Spade because Kate Spade became a lifestyle.
Right, exactly.
It was like a personality trait wearing Kate Spade clothes.
So we never made clothes at Kate Spade when we owned it.
Really?
No, we made apparel pieces to sort of accessorize our accessories. So we'd do a poncho or a trench coat, but we never made apparel when we owned the company. I know when Liz Claiborne bought the company, that was a big initiative of theirs. And so their real clothing line didn't start until 2007.
Oh, wow.
We did. That
was when you guys exited
right.
into that. Okay.
We did design clothes. And we designed it for our Japanese partners because they really wanted clothes. So I was thrilled because I really wanted to work on apparel. So I worked on it with our Japanese partners, and Katie and Andy would come over and we'd do the fittings with them, et cetera. And we bought some of those pieces from our Japanese partners because they manufactured them, and we carried a few of those in our stores. So if you're thinking of that could be the clothing you saw in the Kate Spade stores early on. But we always really stuck to accessories back then.
So in 1999, Neiman Marcus bought a big stake in the business.
Yes.
How did that change things for you guys?
I thought it would change a lot more than it did, but it really took the financial weight of all the leases and the capital investment off of our shoulders and allowed us to focus on building the business strategically with our new partners. We'd have board meetings with them once a quarter, and that was it. We ran the business. We still ran the business day to day and with everything. And big strategic decisions were made at those board meetings. And we would always come with the proposals, and they would say yes or no to them. And if they said no to anything, we usually made our case, and they'd come around. But that was in 1999. And it really, I think, spurred the growth a lot. It's funny, Neiman's had a strategy at that point where they wanted to buy small businesses. They wanted to invest in small businesses where they thought there was a lot of potential for growth. And they started out with Laura Mercier Cosmetics, and then we were the second company they invested in. And they never bought another one after that. I guess we were too much to handle. I don't know.
And you said you were on the marketing side of things. Is there
Yes.
a marketing campaign that you always look back on and have the fondest memories of?
Well, Andy Spade is a marketing genius. And so he was always the one who put the campaigns together with our creative director, Julia Leach. They were brilliant. I loved them. Over time, once Andy joined the business 3 years in, he really took over all of that and was instrumental in doing that from the beginning. I was more sales driven. When I, say marketing, I did all the worked with the PR team that we put in place. And I then became very involved in our international business and with all the licensing deals that we had around the world. And it was terrific. I loved it. But we all utilized those campaigns. I loved every single one of the campaigns. I think one of my favorite shots was taken in Arizona, and it's a woman standing on double lines, and the lines go up her back on her dress, the yellow lines on the highway. It's amazing.
Did you guys ever do a campaign featuring the founders, like you,
We
Katie,
didn't.
and Pamela?
No, we didn't. And it was really wanting to step back from that and not make it about, I mean, Katie never wanted it to be about an individual. She always wanted it to be about the four of us. But it's sort of like when you start a rock band. Everybody wants to talk to the lead singer, and they don't know the bass player's name or the drummer or the guitarist. It's the way it is. You need the whole band to create the music, but people really want to talk to the lead singer. And that's really kind of what happens, and what happened with Katie. And although she didn't want to be that person, and we kind of had to push her out front, she got really good at it. And she was genuine and authentic. And I think that's why people really, her aesthetic really resonated with people so much.
Yeah, it is interesting because it was cool when I was doing research on you guys to see that it was four founders.
Yes.
And growing up, I always just thought, oh, like Kate Spade is like the designer of this brand. But it's so cool knowing that there were four of you really building it together.
It literally took all four of us. We couldn't have done it without one of the four. It was just, it took all of us because we gave blood, sweat, and tears those early years.
What was it like in 2006, was it, when you guys stepped away?
So by that time, we all had children. In fact, the day of the signing of selling it to Neiman Marcus in full, and then the next day selling it to Liz Claiborne, I had my third daughter that Friday when we were still negotiating the final terms of what that was going to look like, and the signing was shortly thereafter. And so I had my daughter on Friday, and I showed up on Monday to this negotiation. And Katie saw me in the lobby. She goes, "What the hell are you doing here?" And I said, "We have to show these guys what we're made of." And I was really serious about it. I was like, I'm showing up to this meeting come hell or high water. Uh-huh. And but that was a time when we started to think more about other priorities in our lives. And it was our children and our families. And so we decided to sell the business. And I have to mention, our fourth partner, Pamela, did not want to sell. She said, once we do this, we're not in control anymore. It's not our company anymore. And we were really, we built the company for 13 years. And we felt like it was time to move on and spend time with our families. And there was no keeping one foot in and one foot out. It was a total sale. And we had agreed to stay on for 6 months and work, which we did. And by the time we left, it was summertime. And it was a great time for us all to be off with our families for the summer. And I remember it was kind of a sad day to leave, but I didn't want to say goodbye to anybody because I knew I'd come back and visit. And so I left that Friday. It was kind of a Friday afternoon, so half the people are, on their way going somewhere anyway. And so I kind of snuck out with my boxes. And Katie, Andy, and Pamela left several weeks later. And had a wonderful summer. We were celebrating all summer, thinking, this is great. This is fantastic. And then I got home in September, and I dropped my kids off at school. And I walked out in front of our school, and I realized for the first time, I had nowhere to go. I had never not worked a day in my life. And it felt really strange because my identity had been so tied to owning and running a business for so long that I didn't know what to do with myself. So I called Katie, and she goes, just come up here. So every day I basically put on my Walkman and walk or run to her house. Now, I live downtown in the Village. She lives on the Upper East Side. So I would walk to her house every day. And then it got cold out. So I was like, we can't do this every day. This is ridiculous. So I started volunteering at my daughter's school. Katie did the same thing. Katie ran her daughter's store at her school. And I became PA president several times. And then I was asked to be board chair of our school board. And it was a time when we were building a high school. So it was a big deal. And I was at school all the time. And it felt great because I was with my kids, but I was around my kids, but not with my kids. And I learned so much during that whole process of working at a nonprofit and working alongside all of these fantastic people who were devoting their time. And did that for many years. And then Katie and I started talking, and we were like, we both really missed creating things, and we missed fashion. So about 2013, we started talking about getting the band back together and getting back into business. And Pamela and Andy had both started their own businesses, but they encouraged us to start a new company because they knew how much we enjoyed working together. And that's how Frances Valentine was born. We started it in 2014, working on designs, etc., getting the space that you saw today. And it was handbags and shoes. And that's what we were going to do, because that's what Katie really loved to design, and it was her forte. And we launched it in 2016 on Valentine's Day, and it was a success right out of the gate. It was really, really great. You know, of course, there were hiccups, and there were some things that we hadn't really realized because we thought we knew everything, of course, when you leave such a successful company. But it had been 8 years, and the world had changed. And e-commerce had taken over from traditional retail and wholesale. Influencers had taken over from editors, and so much of what we knew had completely shifted. So we had a new challenge in front of us, and we were up for the challenge, and we were learning how to do new things, and it was a really exciting time. 2 years after we launched the business, we tragically lost Katie, and the loss was devastating. One of the things that I wanted to do was pay a tribute to her. And so I wanted to create some pieces that were special and reminded me of Katie. And I didn't want it to be a handbag because handbags were her thing. So we recreated 2 of her favorite vintage pieces. One was a caftan that she wore on every vacation we'd ever taken together. And another was an embroidered sweater with flowers embroidered all over it, all different colors. And Katie would wear it backwards all the time. She was so cute. So we recreated those 2 pieces as sort of a special thing. We called it the Love Katie collection. And they sold out immediately. And we reordered them, and they kept selling out. And people started asking for all of the pieces we were using in our campaigns, which were our vintage pieces that we had collected together over all those years. So we started making swing coats, and we started making cigarette pants, and we started making jackets. And all that inspiration came from things that we had loved collecting together over all of those years. So it became something really special and really different and unique. And it's what I think makes Frances Valentine so joyful in its aesthetic, because they're all the pieces that we loved together.
And it's also amazing what you were able to do, when going through a period of probably such immense grief for your best friend, you were able to still build this brand, because I'm sure it's something that Katie would have wanted you to do too.
It was a very difficult time, and I was sort of at a crossroads. I really didn't know what to do. And once I got back to the office many days after we lost her, because I hadn't seen the staff, and they heard it on the news, not from me, because I had run immediately up to Katie's place. So I came back to the office, and we sat down and we talked about it, and we thought, this is what she would want. It's what I wanted to do too. This team had created this brand with us, and it felt like the right thing to do for the team and for Katie's legacy. So we kept going, and I think it's a wonderful tribute to her legacy today.
Definitely. And there's so much of the 2 of you reflected in the brand too. Again, being in the studio today was amazing. Just seeing all the designs.
Thank you.
It's very cool to see the energy from Kate Spade brought into Frances Valentine, but in this new way.
Yes. Well, you asked about grief, and I think work really helped me so much, as I think it does for a lot of people who have lost someone close to them. And out of that grief has come something so beautiful that I didn't anticipate. Also, the book really helped me with my grief. it's funny because when I started working on it, I thought it was going to be really sad. And I think that's maybe why I hesitated for so long writing the book, because I knew all those emotions would come flooding back. And yet it was such a happy time for me, remembering all of the times that we spent together and the good times, because there were so many more of those that make up the book. And it's a legacy. It's really about her life and how this friendship survived so many ups and downs. And I found myself laughing in writing the book so often, sitting by myself, just laughing, a belly laugh, thinking of her. And so I think that really helped me get through it. And I know a lot of people who have read the book have said it really helped them with their grief, which was a surprise to me because I really didn't expect it. It's not why I wrote it. And so it was I'm grateful that those people wrote that and told me about that.
What are some of the things that are the emotions that you grappled with when you were writing it?
Well, there was a lot of laughter. It was, the epilogue was the most difficult part of it, because that's really, I have to talk about her leaving us. But the rest of it was really about her life. And it's one thing that I really wanted to make a point in writing the book is so many articles when she died focused on her leaving us and how she left us, and not about her life, which was her whole life. And that's what I wanted to focus on.
What do you think are the biggest misunderstandings that people have about Katie that you wanted to set straight in the book?
Well, that there is no why when someone takes their own life. Depression is a disease. And it's really hard for people who do not suffer from it, and I'm one of those, to understand how it feels. And I think there's such a stigma, and there was such a stigma back then, that I feel like it's gotten better. I mean, I've been able to talk about it so much because of the book, and I hope it helps people to always seek help and always go talk to someone, and not be ashamed, because there's nothing to be ashamed about. It's something physical that could happen to any of us, and we have to be able to talk about it and try and turn things around. But I think, Katie was such a wonderfully creative person. And I already told you how shy she was and private she was, but she was the funniest person you would have ever met in your life. She truly was. David Spade always says she is the funniest person I've ever known.
That's so sweet. How did your relationship with Andy Spade change post the loss of Katie?
It didn't really change. Andy and I have always been close, and it was like they included me in everything always because I was single for so long when they were together. But we were three people who were best friends together. And so Andy and I have always been close, and will continue, I know, to be close the rest of our lives.
So carrying forward Katie's legacy, I feel like you guys are doing it so well with Frances Valentine. I asked you this when we were filming earlier, but how do you want people to feel when they're wearing the brand? And what emotions do you want it to evoke for them?
Well, our mantra is wear what makes you happy. And it's really about feeling good in what you put on every single day. It doesn't have to be hard. It should be easy. It should be easy for you to walk into your closet and look at that and say, yeah, I'm going to wear that pink velvet suit today because it makes me feel like $1,000,000. Or that print that I got 10 compliments in, last week. I'm going to wear it again today. And it's being able to layer and put things together that just make you feel confident and good about your own personal style. So it's truly about joyful dressing every single day.
It is. I mean, guys, when you walk into the store, just scroll the catalog online, it is so joyful. And that's always how I felt with Kate Spade too. So it's cool to see that the brand is so reflective of just you and Katie's personalities.
Thank you.
Also, I loved that you told the story about your mom and how she went back to school and started a restaurant when she was in her 50s, you said?
Yes.
I think what's so special about what you guys are doing with Frances Valentine is you had your success with Kate Spade, and now you've gone on to build something else, something totally different and new.
Yes.
And it's just a testament to the power of being an entrepreneur and always staying curious, right? And
yes. And I think, for me especially, I can't speak for Katie on this front, but for me, growing up on a farm, we had chores every single day. We got up early every single day. I can't sleep in to save my life. I am up, and no matter what time I go to bed the night before, I'm up early in the morning. I've got a list of stuff that I'm going to accomplish that day. And I'm a busy person. Not to say that everybody else has to be, because they don't. I wish I could calm down a little bit and just relax and enjoy things sometimes. But I love doing things, and I love creating things and making things. And I love meeting people.
how would you describe this chapter of your life?
I can't believe that I get to do this again. I really can't. I feel so blessed and grateful that I can do this again. It's just, I mean, I wish I had my partners with me. But it's such a fantastic time in my life. I truly could never have imagined this could happen. We thought we'd have a company and just this would be a quiet one where we gave people what they loved. And with adding the apparel to it, it has just kind of really grown so big. And people always tell us there's nothing else out there like Frances Valentine. And the quality's really great. It's crafted beautifully. And it's, it makes people happy. And it's not to say that we don't make things that are either navy or black, so you can buy some more traditional colors, but there's always something special about those items. There might be some embroidery. There might be some faux feathers on it. There might be something fun to it. So if you don't want to wear color, because some people don't, they prefer to sort of wear black or a navy or a camel color. And we make that too, but we make them in our own way to make them special.
How long would you say it takes when you're building a brand for the brand's personality to really come to life?
I think it depends on the brand and the founders. We obviously had a leg up because we'd done it before. We had a business before. So, we kind of knew the game plan of what we wanted and the aesthetic we wanted right off the bat. I think when a lot of people start a new business, they're not 100% about how that's all going to work for them. And it's all trial and error. And you have to have failures to learn from those to keep going. And I think taking risks, particularly early on, is a really good thing, because you're never going to be successful right out of the gate. And if you are, your failures might be larger down the road. It's better to fail early and fail a lot, and you learn all the pitfalls. And then you don't make those same mistakes again. You learn so much along the way.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see what, things take time, right? And you said you guys had originally were like, let's start Frances Valentine and do handbags and shoes. But now you guys are known also for your garments.
It's crazy. And jewelry.
And
now,
jewelry.
Too.
Yeah.
So
and the bags
crazy.
are incredible, by the way.
Thank you. I still love a handbag and a pair of shoes. I just don't have a big enough closet at home.
Okay, so a couple questions that I asked Tim Gunn that people loved. The first is, what do you think is the key to looking effortlessly chic walking around New York City?
Oh, a good pair of shoes and a handbag. You could wear a basic outfit, but just throw on the coolest shoes. Like, I've got on red shoes today. I wear pink shoes a lot. I love canary yellow shoes. That makes your whole outfit. One little thing to make your outfit. Throw on a jacket or a scarf or something. An accessory is the easiest way to just, my mother would say, jazz up your outfit, but to kind of stand out.
And then, do you think personal style matters more as we get older?
I think it depends on the person, but it does to me, because after getting through that period of having my kids, because I became, I don't want to say lazy, but I became comfortable during that time, thinking that throwing on the same pair of jeans and a shirt every day and, tromping to school, but I didn't feel as good. And I didn't realize it until a couple of years in that, oh my gosh, I should actually care about what I'm wearing and not just show up with, my typical school outfit. I should really care about what I'm wearing. And I started to, and I felt better every day.
What attributes from your style do you see reflected in your daughters?
Well, they borrow a lot of things out of my closet that don't seem to get returned. So I'm really glad about that. I love it. I love that they like to borrow and steal my jewelry. I love that this sweater is our Marie sweater. All of them own this sweater. And I have a stack in my closet because I never want to be without the sweater in any color we make. So the stack just gets shorter all the time. And I love that they love wearing our pieces. It's really great. And our jeans and our shoes and everything. One of my daughters decided to go on a shopping spree. Well, two of them, actually. My youngest, who's 20, did a shopping spree out at our Sag Harbor store. And my oldest just went on a shopping spree at Madison. So, cha-ching. But it makes me glad. And I'd rather pay the money to do that than somewhere else.
Do you feel like most of your wardrobe is your brand's?
I am 100% Frances Valentine, unless I throw in a pair of vintage pieces. I always wear Frances Valentine head to toe every single day because it's stuff that I want to wear. And there are things that I have always wanted that we make. So I don't need anything else. I always have what I want to wear every single day. Yeah, you have such
fun pieces.
Yes.
I mean, that is I feel like the best part about being a fashion designer.
It's great.
Piece of advice to women that want to make it in the fashion industry and do what you're doing.
I would say find a job at a company you admire. Learn everything about that company. Learn how to do every job, because if you want to start your own business, you're going to have to be the jack of all trades. You're going to have to know how to do everything, from shipping the boxes to accounting to costing things and learning how to put those costing things together, to buying fabrics, to whatever it is. Work for somebody else for a few years and really learn about the business as much as you can before you start.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something that you guys did, which is so cool to learn, that before starting Kate Spade,
right,
and obviously Frances Valentine, you guys had experience working in corporate in the fashion industry.
Right, it's true. And we each came to it with different experiences. So Pamela was production. Katie was design and knowing what she wanted. And she had the background of looking at everything that was out there already. So all of the market research was done. My background was really marketing and sales. And then, of course, Andy Spade is all the creative.
Well, what's one thing that you guys are really excited about that you have coming up with Frances Valentine or in your personal life?
Oh, my gosh. Okay. I'm so excited about this. So anyone who's read the book knows how important Mary Tyler Moore has been to both Katie and to me throughout our lives. And I think I just have to tell this story if we have time. So we grew up watching the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Mary Richards was the character she played on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And in the 1970s, when women couldn't open their own bank account without their husband or their father's signature, but yes, that is so true. Believe it. It's unreal to me now to think about it. And
so recent too.
It's crazy. It's recent.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a girl in the 70s, and I couldn't go open a checking account without my dad, not my mom, my dad coming to sign for it for me. So Mary's show came about at a time the women's movement was happening, and Mary was a woman, and as an actress, she decided, I'm creating the show. I don't want a boyfriend, a fiance, a husband in her life. I want this to be a single woman who moves to the big city and makes it on her own. She was such an inspiration to generations of women because she told us that we could go and become that we could do that. And so Mary was an inspiration my whole life. And the reason that both Katie and I majored in journalism, and we got to meet her at Kate Spade. She came to our office one day to see our bags, and we got to tell her what an inspiration she'd been to. She was so nice and so lovely.
She was probably so honored. Right? She's probably like, what?
Well, so the title of the book is We Might Just Make It After All, which is inspired by the theme song to the Mary Tyler Moore Show, You Might Just Make It After All. And about a year and a half ago, the Mary Tyler Moore Foundation called us. Mary died about 9 years ago. Her husband, Dr. Robert Levine, who's 20 years her junior, still running her foundation. And they called us and they said, we'd love to meet with you. We had a Zoom with them, and they said, we've been looking at your designs for quite some time now, and it reminds us so much of Mary, and we'd love to do something with you. So Dr. Levine invited us out to Connecticut to Mary and his farm, and he said, we're selling the farm, but I wanted to show you Mary's closet before we sell it. So I got a tour. Our whole creative team came out, our design team. I got a tour of Mary Tyler Moore's closet. And I'm looking through things and not wanting to touch them. And he reaches over my shoulder, grabs an outfit and said, try this on and try this on and try this on. So I got to try on all of Mary's clothes in her closet. It was like a dream come true, just amazing. 2 weeks later, he called and he said, the auctioneer people are here. I don't know what to do with her clothes. Can you come get them? So I said, yes, we'll find a home, the right home for them. And so I was up in Mary's closet once again, packing up the boxes. And Robert Levine walks up with an envelope. And he said, I can't give this to you for good, but I'm giving it to you for safekeeping. I opened the envelope, and it was the hat that she threw up in the air on the show, the iconic hat. So we have the hat. We're doing a whole collaboration with the Mary Tyler Moore Foundation to benefit retinal diabetes research. It's the Vision Initiative, and it's launching this fall. So we're doing the hat, we're doing Mary's pea coats, we're doing all of these iconic pieces that she wore on the Mary Tyler Moore show as Mary Richards, and also dipping back into her Laura Petrie days on the Dick Van Dyke show with the cigarette pants and the cute little short sweaters. So I am overjoyed to be doing this with the Mary Tyler Moore Foundation. And for me personally, it's come full circle in my life. And I really feel like, and I get choked up when I talk about this, but I really feel like Mary and Katie are up there as angels making this all happen.
I was just going to say, it sounds so full circle. And then I was going to ask as a follow-up, do you ever feel like Katie is with you sometimes at work in different ways?
I do. And there are the funny times that happen when somebody on the subways acting kooky and screaming at me. And I just look up, I was like, I wish I could call you right now. Because I do miss her, because she would have laughed hysterically at whatever had just happened to me.
It's so sweet knowing your guys' friendship and the best friendship that you had. Was Pamela somebody that you went to school with as well? So
Pamela, we met through mutual friends. And also from the Midwest. We are all from the Midwest, which is so funny. But Pamela, we met through mutual friends, and then we became really good friends. And it's so funny because years after we started the business together, Pamela and I are sitting there having lunch at Kate Spade. And she said, yeah, I had this apartment with this purple velvet couch in it. And I said, did you have a faux library painted on your walls in your apartment? And she said, yeah, how did you know that? And I said, I lived next door to you and could look into your apartment. So this is long before we even met each other. We lived next door to each other in the East Village in New York City.
That's weird.
It's
Invisible
crazy.
String theory.
It's crazy. I know. We were supposed to meet in our lives.
And what business did she go on and create after Kate Spade?
So Pamela started a company called Prink Shop, like print and ink, where she worked with nonprofits to create items for them to sell. She uses, a lot of folks who are less fortunate to help create those items. So it's really great. It's a great business.
And then what about Andy Spade?
So Andy started, this was like right when we sold Kate Spade, he started a business called Partners in Spade as a branding agency. And he, I think, sold that business in New York to his partner here, and then started a Partners in Spade West out in California.
All right, well, let's give one final piece of advice. What is a piece of advice that you would give to your 20-year-old self?
Oh my gosh. You know what? Don't sweat the small stuff, and have confidence in what you're doing, but really not to worry so much about all the little things around and the voices that you hear from other people. Because negativity, particularly today, can really seep in. And I think optimism over cynicism is always the best way to live. But if I were 20 years old today, I'd say stay off my phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stay off screens. Meet people, have relationships, talk to people, have conversations, mingle with people. Because I think it's one of the things we're missing in society today is actually physically being around other people, communicating, and having those relationships that are so critical to young people.
Well, thank you so much for being on Post Run High and doing our interview show before this. You're amazing.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Everybody check out Frances Valentine and pick up a copy of Elyce's book that came out last summer that's now on the New York Times bestselling
It
list.
was New York Times bestseller last year,
year.
and it just came back on the USA Today bestseller list last week.
We're resurfacing. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.